Thank God for Frieren and Mao Mao, huh? The winter 2024 season of anime is mercifully done with only two real highlights to show for it, both of which started in the fall of 2023, by the way. So if you exclude those as winter 2024 originals, this is probably my least favorite season of anime ever. So let's do some reviewing. Mr. Villain's Day Off tells of an agent of an alien race whose mission is to wipe out humanity, whose day job requires spying on the earthly race in his chosen country of Japan. But on his off days, he takes full advantage of his leisure time by participating in his favorite activity, going to see the pandas at the zoo. I love the premise and wish it worked, but the jokes evolve slowly and the punchlines never hit. Comedies that don't get the comedy right aren't worth watching, is my expert analysis. Hokkaido Gals Are Super Adorable tells of a city slicker who suddenly moves to the northernmost city of Japan, where he meets and soon falls in love with a buxom and free-spirited blonde girl. I was hoping the show would have the charm of My Dress Up Darling, a similarly horny but excellent show that premiered in last year's winter season. But Hokkaido Gals is a run-of-the-mill ecchi, not really worth your time unless you're into this stuff. Gekkai Elise is about an elite surgeon in present-day Japan who magically transports to a previous time to share her medical knowledge. At least it's what the summary says, because I gave the show about 10 minutes before dipping and I honestly don't remember that much about it. The premise has promise, but the writing is so bad. Don't watch this show. Delusional Monthly Magazine is about a tabloid set in either 18th century Vienna or 22nd century Kyoto, and I honestly can't tell which it is. And that is a testament to the show's bizarre art style, which is like if some art director wanted the show to have the appearance of looking unique without actually standing out in any way. And I think I remember the dialogue and the pacing having some energy, but the show's visuals are just so flat that I can't take it seriously. Give it a shot if you're curious, I guess. Cherry Magic, 30 Years of Virginity Can Make You a Wizard is both a bad workplace comedy and a bad boys love romance. I don't begrudge anyone who likes this show, but it's another example of pandering to a crowd with low expectations for their representation. In general, but especially regarding this show, we deserve better. So every year I always find this one show that I predict I will love based entirely off of title and poster, and I'm usually right. In 2021, it was Wonder Egg Priority. In 2022, it was Call of the Night. In 2023, it was Kimisomu. And in 2024, I swore it was going to be Metallic Rouge. With its excellent name and excellent poster, it was sure to be the anime of this season. And the first episode starts off pretty well with key homages to Blade Runner and Akira, set in a futuristic dark dystopia, but with enough cute girls and cheeriness to get us interested in the storyline. And then we get to the episode's dramatic fight scene, which sucks. I don't care for fight scenes in general, so you probably shouldn't take my word on the quality of an animated fight scene. But this one especially drags, and even worse, it makes it seem as if it's the most important part of the story. And that's my cue to peace out. So let's get to the good stuff now. A Sign of Affection features our deaf, college-age girl Yuki and her blossoming love for the hunky and multilingual Itsuomi. This is a shoujo rom-com that borrows a lot of glory from the 2016 KyoAni movie A Silent Voice, but from the perspective of our damsel instead of our boy, since this is a shoujo rom-com after all. And this is a really good decision because while Yuki can't vocalize, we still get access to her thoughts via the narration through her internal monologue, which happens to feature some of the most poetic and floral writing I've ever heard in an anime. And we also get to learn some basic Japanese sign language along the way, though I don't know how useful I personally find that. But from there, we run into some pretty recognizable shoujo problems. The core story of A Sign of Affection isn't all that interesting. The show does the shoujo thing of making our lead character an uninteresting self-insert, even though she suffers from an abnormality that would usually make her pretty unique. But beyond her deafness, I couldn't tell you any interesting thing about her, what she desires, what she's studying, what her future goals and targets are. Which I get is the point and is often not necessary for the health of a good shoujo rom-com, since it usually comes paired with a love interest that actually has dimension. But I can't say I care that much for Itsuomi either, though I certainly understand his appeal. This show has a conflict problem that starts when our two leads get together really early in the runtime, which is good in theory, but it sort of removes the conflict of romantic tension early on in the show. And it doesn't help that the third part of the love triangle that the show wants us to invest in just kind of falls flat. And I think that's a shame because I liked Oishi's story the best and wanted to explore it a little bit more. It wouldn't surprise me if Oishi's story is explored a bit more in the original manga, but the show suffers from introducing him as a character but never really getting to that point, thereby making his inclusion in the show kind of useless. The B and C romances don't do anything for me either, nor do any of the side characters besides Oishi. But what ultimately saves this show is its visual presentation. It nails the winter feel with so many wonderful outfits and chilly outdoor scenes for our lovers to take part in. The best one when we follow our heroes on a cozy double date to Costco, of all places. It's a very cozy show overall, even for someone who doesn't seek out cozy media because I live in a place that never dips below 50 degrees. And while I don't care much for Itsuomi, the other beautiful boys are fun to look at. I don't obsess over 2D characters as a rule, but Sheen could make me reconsider. A Sign of Affection is both a well-done shoujo rom-com and a worthwhile foil to A Silent Voice, even if both of those audiences have quite a bit of overlap. I likely won't revisit it, besides searching its stellar ED on YouTube, but it gets a 7 out of 10. Kusuria no Hitorigoto, I said it right this time, or The Apothecary Diaries continued its magnificent run into the winter 2024 season, becoming one of the two darlings of this season and one of the only reasons to keep up with anime seasonals through the winter months. The second core of our show finds our hero Mao Mao with added responsibility in and around the royal palace, and facing new enemies and new challenges as old memories resurface. I can't think of a show that improved as much over the span of 24 episodes as The Apothecary Diaries. And I also can't think of one that balances so many themes and topics with such grace and quality. I would normally express skepticism about a show that tries to be a courtroom drama, and a workplace comedy, and a medical serial, and a murder mystery all in the same package, but Apothecary nails it. Each facet of the show would itself make a great anime, and it's all the more impressive that the show is able to handle all four at once, while also showing some of the most sensitive insight on some underexplored topics, like women in the workplace, like maternity, like sex work, power dynamics, and gender. There is so much good gender stuff in this show. I've said it before, but it's worth repeating. The aspect of a show that grabs me the most is a magnetic main character. And our hero Mao Mao is one of the most engaging anime main characters I've seen in years. And while I don't usually gravitate towards the overpowered hero, as Mao Mao certainly qualifies for that title with her superior intellect, there exists this ever-present conflict of Mao Mao's low status as expressed by her gender and her family dynamics, which always gives her something to struggle against, even if she can outsmart literally anyone. I expressed some complaints about this show in the fall season that still held up in the winter season. For one, I kind of wish the show would just pick a lane. I know I said earlier that it handles all of its themes well, and I do mean that. But I also like the court drama episodes just a little bit more than I like the murder mystery or the medical mystery episodes, so I kind of wish we just stuck with that. But my biggest complaint involves Jinshi. Well, not really involves Jinshi, it's just Jinshi. I don't find him that interesting a character, and I also don't think the romantic tension between him and Mao Mao adds anything to the show, especially since both of these characters are so loudly queer-coded. Making a potentially gay man a romantic love interest for a potentially asexual woman doesn't really fit, doesn't interest me, not really about that. But that's pretty much it when it comes to complaints. The dramatic scenes are juicy, the emotional scenes are heavy, and the sudden jokes work really well too. This is sneakily one of the funniest shows I've seen in a while, even if comedy isn't its primary aim. But mostly, this is a memorable drama that does a lot of things well, even if there are some questionable aspects. The Apothecary Diaries is 100% worth your time. Buy all the Mao Mao stock you can find. 8 out of 10. And while in many other years Apothecary would be my favorite show of the season, I went into the winter season having a good idea of what would take my #1 spot, because it will probably be everyone's #1 show of the season, as it currently stands as the #1 rated show of all time on my anime list as of time of recording. And if you want to see or read more eloquent anime personalities gush over Frieren, I recommend you do that. Because while I still love Frieren and still rank it as my favorite show of the season, I'm going to dedicate this time to talk about why I think it didn't bring the same level of quality in the winter season as it did in the fall season. Fair warning, some mild Frieren slander is incoming. Number 1, I don't like what this story does with Sane. I really like Sane as a character, as I think his elderly wisdom provides a nice foil for Fern and Stark's immaturity. I also think having a horny priest as part of the main group provides a lot of mischievous opportunities. But right when we meet him, he decides to break off from the main group and go look for his friend, and it's like, goodbye forever, I guess? I get the decision from his perspective, but from a narrative perspective, it feels like the time that we spend with him is too short. What was even the point of it? Number 2, Frieren turns into a shonen battle anime. This isn't an inherently bad thing, just a personal taste thing, but I think the show is at its best when Frieren and company are meeting people, shaking hands and kissing babies. Diplomacy. Some real Star Trek stuff. But the first class mage test, which essentially oversees the entirety of the second core, turns into a tournament arc, with the first test essentially turning into a battle royale amongst magical people who all have certain unique and indefensible powers. And I don't really care for any of that, in this show or any other. Number 3, the violence makes no sense. The mage test becomes violent at certain points, both in the first and the second test. And the violence can get pretty brutal with these mages pushed towards indiscriminate killing of people that they considered friends and colleagues before. But a lot of the most difficult aspects of this violence gets sanitized without too much explanation. Like when our test takers suddenly have a change of heart between episodes in the first phase of the test and decide against this indiscriminate killing, even though that was the main source of danger and drama in the previous episode. Or when we see multiple test takers get stabbed through the abdomen, presumably hitting vital organs, and then ending up fine because of healing magic, or the rules of the competition, or clones. I understand why a show marketed to older kids and younger adults would want to hold back on some of its more violent aspects, but it makes this arc kind of punchless, as we never get the sense that our heroes are in any actual danger like they were in the first core. Number 4, there's too much magic. This is another personal thing, as I just usually don't care for shows that center around magic, but I think the magic that Frieren presents was handled really gracefully in the first core, when we're introduced to it as knowledge that can be acquired instead of a power that some beings have and some don't. And I understand that the conflict between talent and skill becomes more of a thing later in the show, but the second core introduces a ton of beings who have powers that, if harnessed correctly, could theoretically destroy the world. And so I ask again, what happened to the diplomacy? Number 5, I don't like Serie. There is an all-powerful mage elf that has the ability to grant anyone any spell that they desire, so long as they prove their worthiness for that spell, which kind of makes all of the previous stuff kind of pointless. Why would anyone do any sort of community building in this world when the key to being all-powerful is to be liked by this one elf? Why? But now that we've listed my complaints, it's only right that we list the positives about this show, because there are quite a few. The show knows how to do pathos, for one. Of the 10 most emotional moments I've had watching anime in the past year, I'd say like 9 of them have come from watching Frieren. Mostly from the first core, but it still counts. The music, the background, the animation all remain fantastic, and aesthetically there is no dip in quality in the second core than from the first core. This show is smart and beautiful and devastating and a worthy addition to the all-time anime canon. Every glowing thing that everyone has ever said about this show is correct. I'm just a 30-year-old who doesn't really like what the kids like anymore. More diplomacy! Last year, I said that Frieren had a chance to be a 10 out of 10 show, and while that still remains a possibility if it continues, there were too many things that I didn't like about the most recent stretch of episodes for me to give it that rating. But a 9 out of 10 is still pretty great. It's easily my favorite show of the season, and yeah, you should definitely check it out. While I didn't care very much for this winter season, there is a lot that I'm looking forward to that's coming out this spring. First and foremost, the 3rd season of Hibike Euphonium, Kyoto Animation's masterpiece and probably my favorite show of all time. Secondly, a baseball show, Oblivion Battery. Is it going to be any good? I don't know, but I'm going to watch it. There's a couple fun-looking high school romances on tap, Whisper Me a Love Song and A Condition Called Love. A+ titles, you got me for 10 minutes. I don't exactly know what Jellyfish Don't Swim in the Night is going to be about, but the last show that I watched with the word jellyfish in the title was damn near perfect. And I'm also getting a good feeling about Train to the End of the World. That promo looks so excellent. Whether any of it turns out to be any good is anyone's guess. But I hope to have an update in about 3 months regardless.